titled The Ewoks Coping in the Changing World, a study on the continuity and discontinuity of their adaptive strategies. I would like to call on Dr. Faye Yolanda Gatan Rosario and Dr. Darwin Don Dacles of St. Mary's University from Bayombong, Nueva Vizcaya. Let's give them a round of applause.
The research is titled The Ewoks Coping in a Changing World. This is a documentation on the adaptive strategies, continuities and discontinuities of the Ewok people of Cayapa, province of Nueva Vizcaya, Region 2, Philippines. We are actually four in this research endeavor. We have our Director of the Indigenous Knowledge and Tradition Center of St. Mary's University, Bayombong, Nueva Vizcaya, the gateway to the Cagayan Valley region. Is Madam Yolanda Gatan Rosario, who is an IP. She is a Gadang, a full-blooded Gadang, and yours truly, Darwin Dacles, I am an Isinay. And the third researcher is Mr. Leonard Clemens Cadoy, who is a mixture of 50% Kalanguya, 25% Ibaloy, and 25% Iwak. So he has the facility of language, and so therefore we are very fortunate that he is in the office. He is in charge of the translation during the focus group discussion of the purpose of the study that we really need to share. We really need the people to understand the main intent of the paper. And of course, the fourth group comprises our Ewok cultural bearers and masters in the place Cayapa. So the main aim of the study is to document the ethno-ecological adaptation of the Ewoks and see how these adaptive strategies have changed or been sustained over time. Specifically, we need to describe the Ewoks, locate the Ewoks in their culture centers, describe the Ewoks' immediate environment, because without this description of the immediate environment, we cannot do any study of their adaptive strategies. Then document the practices of the Ewoks' main system, economic system, which is cultivation of the land, agriculture. Note the underlying changes that have taken place in the practice across time, and explain the importance of such a technology in the overall survival of the Ewok people. So some questions were asked a while back, just this morning, about some tools and methodologies, ma'am, of qualitative researches. So some of this we were able to use, and some this culture of inquiry shared by Sir Sosimo. The first one is the tool of historical and anthropological research, where we need to collect, evaluate data to describe, explain, and understand events in the Ewok's past, while the anthropological approach necessitated a study of their local knowledge of shifting cultivation, because part of their responses are actually based on certain needs and appreciation of their activities and organization. In tracing some historical sources, we were fortunate to see the book written, the only historical account of the Ewoks in 1982 by Jesus Peralta, and an unpublished thesis by Castillo Calance in 1999, and a study done by Ramos Bonifacio in 2003 about describing the abode of the Ewok people called the Abong. And of course, these are not enough sources. We need to look into secondary sources like some translations made by Blair and Robertson entitled The Philippine Islands, and William Scott's translation of the work of Father Francisco Antolin, Notices of the Pagan Igorots in the Interior of the Island of Manila, and Felix Kissing's The Ethnohistory of Northern Luzon. But these secondary sources, again, we need to triangulate with the experiences of the people, their history based on oral tradition. And this was necessary, particularly there are several versions as to the origins of the Ewok as a people. And this information was central especially in doing the qualitative part, accounts given by practitioners or gardeners who are directly involved in their economic activities. The third method is doing informal retrospective interview, where cultural bearers, especially the elders, Iwak elders, were crucial in resurfacing knowledge about practices done in the past so that their continuities and discontinuities in the strategies can be determined. Informal interviews were thus done not only with cultural bearers and gardeners, but everyone who showed interest in the unveiling of their culture. In the choice of people to interview, you see, we need to consider this. In the interview, primary consideration was given to the elders, for their knowledge goes far back to when they were adolescents, up to the time of their rootedness in the culture centers. Their willingness to be interviewed was important since they were made to understand that they were co-researchers and their informed prior consent had to be sought. And the fourth method is FGDs, doing FGDs that help gather data more systematically. This allowed the team to clarify confusing information derived from written sources or to counter-check ambiguous ideas from individual interviews. These were then audio taped, then later transcribed, then interpreted. The fifth method is photo-video documentation. Since a mere description of the indigenous knowledge and systems of the Iwak will not suffice, the team also used photo-video documentation throughout, which required a certain degree of participant observation. Then we need to have ocular visitation of the culture centers of the Iwak. The sixth method is data transcription and inductive reasoning. The information taken from various sources was transcribed. Then we need to go back to the culture center to let the people validate again and to re-authenticate this inductive reasoning and data transcription. So you see there some clips showing the FGDs conducted in the different culture centers. In the implementation part, we need to inform the local NCIP that we are conducting a qualitative research that entails participation of the Iwak people. So taking this as our starting point, we identified and processed possible sources of information para mas madali para sa amin. Then ocular inspection of the Iwak culture centers and informed consent with cultural bearers and masters according to IPRA law. Then we made the ocular inspection, collating, cataloging, and transcribing of existing data. And we need to participate to disseminate at large the purpose of the study on February 25 to 26 during the first Iwak Congress, where the Iwak people gathered together. And for adaptive strategies documentation, as early as December 2010, the data instrumentation was already crafted, validated by the University Research Center, revised, with the suggestion of the panel members, but again, we need to include some other items in the questionnaire that the cultural bearers and masters deem relevant. So we need to include these items. Then consolidation of initial data, immersion activities happened, especially during the third and fourth week of April 25-26, and then we started rewriting all first week of May till this time. So you see there's some photo documentation of the immersion activities, Iwak centers. We now proceed to the first part. Okay, so who are these Iwaks and some geographic profile of Kayapak? Today, the Iwak people would find themselves living in the political upland territory of the municipality of Kayapak. This is the home bastion of the Iwak people, a third-class municipality in the western portion of the province of Nueva Vizcaya, Region 2. Here is a map showing Nueva Vizcaya relative to its location in northern Luzon and Cayapa boundaries. There, the red one there. And then Cayapa relative to its distance from the provincial capital and the country's capital. About 66 kilometers away from Bayombong and 326.99 kilometers away from Manila. Cayapa, it has an approximated area of about 78,459.69 hectares, basically agricultural. It has an altitude of 4,300 feet above sea level and 9,600 feet above sea level on top of Mount Ugo and Mount Pulag, the highest mountain peak in northern Luzon that touches Cayapa. Boundaries of Cayapa: north, province of Ifugao; west by the province of Benguet, connected via the Ambuclao Road; south by municipality of Santa Fe; southeast by Aritao; east by Bambang; northeast by Ambaggio. So Cayapa is politically subdivided into 30 barangays. 7 of these barangays are Iwak culture centers. It is compared to Baguio, Ansipsip, which is a contiguous area of Itogon, Benguet, and a barangay of Cayapa. Then another contiguous area of Buyasyas, Cayapa, and Buyasyas, Santa Fe. So these are the Iwak culture centers. So we made this for you to see. So the broken arrow there, yan po yung ginamit naming trail. We have to climb the mountains given the 30,000 initial funding. Okay, and these are the culture centers. And so for many centuries, scholars and writers were baffled by stories surrounding the presence of this unique ethnic group living deep in Cordillera and Caraballo mountain ranges of northern Luzon. The trail quest for this identity riddle started from obscure Spanish documents, which were very few, fragmentary, and to the extreme level, none at all. This ethnographic inquiry had eluded the best investigators of those times, not until dedicated researchers made extensive and systematic effort to unveil the mystery about the Iwak people. Peralta posted on one of the reasons why earlier investigations failed to unravel the identity of these people. It was because of the wide array of names that were being tagged to these old mounted folks. Generations of Spanish historical recorders would discuss a wide variety of tribes like the Iguats, the Dumangis, Alegüeses, Alagüeses, Gumanji, Jumangis, Awa, Uwak, Alagot, Yumangi, and Dangatan, when in reality, all of these names are actually applicable to but one generic tribal name called Iwak. The Iwak existence, we now proceed to the early history, was first revealed in an old Spanish document in 1591 by Pedro de Cid to the old town of Tuy or Ituy. Ituy was an old Spanish administrative unit. Today, this comprises the 6 municipal territories of Santa Fe, Cayapa, Aritao, Dupax del Norte, Dupax Sur, and Bambang. As in other chronicles, the Spanish were taken aback by the richness of the people, who adorned their bodies with gold as part of an elaborate bodily ornamentation, which when the former asked where the source of gold came from, some tribesmen responded, Igua, a name of a place or a group of people in Cayapa, Panuypuy, and Bila villages. The inhabitants of these villages showed the village of Bayaban near Igua, close to the Igolotes, where the gold mines were located. In 1594, see, as early as 1591, nababanggit na po ang Iwak. Unfortunately, yun pong hindi kaagad yumakap sa Katolisismo, Kristyanismo ay basta tinawag na lang na Igolotes. Only Bugkalot, Isinay, and Gadang were included in the old administrative area of Itoy. Perhaps it is safe to say the Iwak of old Itoy. In 1635, a Spanish friar Thomas also made mention of the Alegüeses living along the ridges in the vicinity of Lower Cayapa Valley. which is called Pampang. Pampang still exists today. In 1637, another report was made. In 1739, a Dominican priest recorded that in the summits and ridges overlooking Itoy, the Dumangis, another Iwak name, were living in some 30 villages. Those of the Awa also numbered about 20 villages. Antolin, 1970, enunciates that at that time, the most common term for these inhabitants was the Owa or Owak. Now, in the process of doing the research, asan kaya rito? The question was asked, asan kaya rito yung Awa River? And from our focus group discussions with the people and some available sources, we found out that the Awa River is now called the Santa Cruz River. Antolin mentioned of a Father Herrera in 1755 who, on his way to Aritao, Nueva Vizcaya from the province of Pangasinan, passed through the mountain ranges near the Igorots of Awa using what is still known today as Villaverde Trail. Father Cristobal Rodriguez of Dupax strengthened the claim of the Iwak's presence in the Awa when he took the opposite direction in going to Pangasinan via the Awa River. In the same year, another account from Dominican priest Lobato narrated that in order to reach the town of Aritao from Pangasinan, they had to cut across mountain ranges occupied by fierce Igorotes at Awa. They arrived at City of Grubul and a fierce battle was fought. Of course, talo po yung ating Iwak elders. And in our research also, we were able to see and document the old Spanish Trail. These are old Spanish trails going southwest to the old Iwak sites of Amayaan, Kagumbawan, and Busdok. They have to leave the place or the places because of diseases, because of these diseases that plagued the early sites. They move northeast and disperse in these culture centers. However, Spanish logbook showed interesting entries about the tribe's frugal and simple ways. They were taro or gabi cultivators and eaters. Now, Malumbres, writing early in the 20th century, says that the Igorotes of Cayapa were diligent workers, growing taro, sweet potato, beans, and cabbages upon the slopes. Some of them were also dedicated to the extraction of gold from the Ambayabang River. This name still exists today. Their main commerce was with other towns of Vizcaya and Pangasinan. A mission center was established in 1894 at Pinquian, then later in 1898 at Bisong. To date, these two places still exist. So knowing this physiographic profile, we now proceed to the adaptive strategies of the Iwaks of Cayapa.
Since we don't have time, please allow me to just go over the findings and then the recommendations, as this is actually the heart of the study. Clem, please. You can actually see the totality of the research in the website that Sir Joel is going to provide you. Kasi sayang naman po yung data. Okay, so Clem, please just go to the conclusions and the recommendations. Sir, just allow 2 minutes more. Based from the findings, based from the research that you conducted, the following conclusions can therefore be arrived at. The Iwaks of Cayapan, Nueva Vizcaya are an ethno-linguistic group which from the documentary sources are a people that practice shifting cultivation and wet agriculture, and these economic activities have sustained them for many generations. On the basis of a semi-census survey, Iwa culture centers are found in the mountain enclaves of Barangays Besong, Alang sa Laksa, Amilong Labeng, Buyasyas Cayapa, and Buyasyas Santa Fe. Given the physiographic makeup of these culture centers, the Iwaks have adapted themselves to the environment through the practice of Sweden and wet agriculture. These economic activities have depended upon which culture center is mentioned. Thus far, it may be said that while a number of practices is generally shared by the Iwaks, there are slight differences in the manner by which economic activities are done. Since most Iwak communities are located in man-made or natural plateaus or at the foot of the mountains, the Sweden cultivation system is largely practiced except in those centers which have gradual land elevations and which abound in water, where wet agriculture like Libawan and Tuyungan is practiced. A farming cycle dependent on which crops are grown. Moreover, land utilization varies. So you have pasture lands, you have agricultural lands, you also have watershed areas. Some Iwak culture centers have greater part of their territory given to this, while others are for gardening and wet agriculture. In histories past, rituals played a significant role in the farming cycle of the Iwaks, but the prioritization of needs and the perceived lack of practicality, given the expenses surrounding the celebration, made their conduct a mere survival of the past. That is where the discontinuity starts. In a setup where fields and gardens have to be monitored time and again, a sexual division of labor is in place. The Iwaks also draw the line between tasks that are heavy, which are given to men, and those that are menial, which are given to women. Children's participation in the agricultural cycle is seen from their typical roles as errand boys or girls, or in performing household chores like washing of dishes or clothes, or taking care of their younger siblings while their parents are out in the field. This will probably explain why the dropout percentage in schools in Cayapa is very high among the Iwaks, because they are, parents rather, are dependent on their children for these tasks, taking care of the children, running errands, etc. For people, therefore, that depend on cultivation, there is little industrial art except for the garden tools and farm implements, which are either homemade or obtained from the markets. You saw them a while back. The practice of Sweden agriculture, however, has given the Iwaks a more settled way of life. Dwellings are constructed such that spaces beneath them are left open for the domestication of animals. Crop rotation also guaranteed the Iwaks a stable source of food supply. The availability of taro and sweet potato the whole year round compensates for what is lacking during the lean months. In their overall survival as a people, the Iwaks have to contend with some conditions brought forth by the changing of the times. Namely, while originally producing agricultural outputs only for home consumption, the Iwaks have entered into the market sphere to deal with surplus products. Having bigger families with growing needs, however, they have to haggle for reasonable prices and have to deal with middlemen. More often, in their desire to get their goods disposed with, they become prey to prices dictated by the latter. For those located in mountainous terrains, the absence of farm-to-market roads adds to their economic burden. The Iwaks have to pay high freight rates, especially during the rainy season when roads are at their worst. They have to contend with seasonal problems like the onset of heavy rains or typhoons during the wet season, or the shortage of water in summer. While the Iwaks are able to feed their families, seldom are they able to send their children to school. Those that do attend school finish until high school or 2 years in college, since the problem is always with sustaining them. Iwaks' timidity also gets in the way when negotiating for things or matters that affect them. As indigenous peoples, however familiar with indigenous knowledge, the Iwaks are very sensitive and caring of their environment. Having learned to plant new crop varieties from taro and sweet potato, along with the domestication of animals, with the shift from its major function as food for rituals to food for home consumption, they have ensured their survival over the years. These are some of our recommendations. To ensure the proper and continued use of this centuries-old practice of Sweden farming and wet agriculture, which supported them for many generations, the use of commercial fertilizers as well as machines for intensive cultivation must have to be minimized. It is therefore strongly recommended that government agencies, both national and local, spearhead a rigorous information dissemination drive about the right and proper way of doing Sweden fields and wet agriculture. Since the facility with which machines have brought about the clearing of lands would tempt the Iwak into using the technology to hasten the clearing of more lands with wanton disregard for environmental conservation, informal education, trainings, and workshops among gardeners and farmers can capacitate them in assessing their knowledge in the light of the unconscious neglect of passing on to the next generation indigenous knowledge held in esteem by past Iwaks. It helps that some of the children that go to state colleges or universities earn degrees in agriculture rather than become professionals elsewhere in the future. But like those in the mainstream longing for material advancement and financial security for their children, Iwaks also wish that their children finish something else. Scholarship grants and other educational opportunities for them, therefore, is a much-needed relief and support given the financial constraints of majority of the Iwaks. Moreover, although respondents say that the local government pursues agricultural policies deemed to improve the market value of their crops, there seems to be the absence of a direct consultation with them on how best to address issues such as this. A periodic consultation should therefore take place with agriculturists assigned at the municipality so that measures to improve crop produce may be thought with the view of sustaining the people at the same time protecting the environment. Compared to Amelong Labeng, Buyasias, and Kayapa proper West and Besong, Alang sa Laksang experiences water shortage. It is therefore recommended that non-governmental organizations, private and state agencies alike, look into the possibility of establishing linkages with the local government unit of Kayapa to address this problem as part of their corporate social responsibility. The building of water reservoir for natural springs and planting trees in watersheds are also strongly recommended, for these things can preserve and trap the much-needed water for household and agricultural consumption rather than continuous flow of water that result to wastage. Since the high elevation, the cold climate of most aquaculture centers and market demands affect crop production, the exploration of other crops that can thrive in these areas aside from the usual vegetables or crops being planted is also recommended. Above all, since it has been proven historically that the Iwak people is one of the original settlers of Cayapan, Nueva Vizcaya, a more comprehensive and dynamic integration of this group of people, the political, socio-economic, and moral fibers of society, be made for the preservation, protection, promotion of their indigenous knowledge, systems, and practices for their growth and development as a people. That was fast. Thank you.
Thank you very much. From Rainbow.
As we were just listening to the presentation, it seems that it's more on the economic and the social level. Was there a little glimpse of their arts and culture?
I think it was made clear at the very beginning that the scope and the limitation of the study was only on the adaptive strategies. In fact, if you notice, the work was rather comprehensive. I was not even given a chance to share with you the details of the study. Suffice it is to say that given this very simple economic activity, the only art that these people have could be seen from their material culture, like the farm implements, if not the baskets that they weave, if not the soft brooms that they make, and not to mention, of course, the houses that they build. There is no, so far from our research, there is no mention about weaving among the people. But maybe if we're going to delve into, what do you call this now, a greater discussion with the people, we might be able to surface that. But remember that part of the study actually sprung from historical documents. Part of our function as researchers was to try to prove whether this shifting cultivation or slash and burn and upland and wet agriculture could be traced back to history's past. And indeed, no, the documentary sources do say that these people from the very beginning had been practicing shifting agriculture. And it is a beauty to find out that they do continue practicing this technology, primarily because they know which part of the lands to cultivate, they know which crops and varieties to produce, they know which varieties to feed them at a particular part of the year. No? So this indigenous knowledge, which had been passed on from one generation to the next, is consciously being, what do you call this now, practiced by the Ewoks. But then again, we mentioned that like any people among the mainstream, the Ewoks struggle also for cultural identity. That's why when we were trying to draw this information from them, we had to make them understand and appreciate that this was something that they should not be afraid to share. It's not something that they should be shy or timid about, because the fact that they have ensured their survival for centuries already and have not destroyed their environment is something else.
Okay, thank you very much, ma'am. I guess we now have to thank the team from St. Mary's Bayonbong, Dacles, Dr. Gatan, Rosario, and Mr. Clem. Thank you very much.